I've actually been on the continent of Africa for 72 hours. This is my very first trip to Africa. And I have to say, it's surpassed all of my expectations. It's spectacularly beautiful. And all of the people that I've met along the way have been incredibly kind and gracious and wonderful hosts. I'm going to be going to Cape Town in 2 days, but everybody tells me Cape Town is a big disappointment after Durban, right? So thank you again for having me, and congratulations to all of the girls who are here. There was, my understanding, it was an incredibly competitive event, and you guys have been very much selected and lifted up by your teachers and by your schools. So again, congratulations, and I'm happy to be with you today. So I have to say, when I started university in 1985, I'll pause while you do the math. The ratio of men to women in my university was 7 to 1. It was 7 boys to every girl at my university. And that means that for every 1 woman in the classroom, there were 7 guys, right? And so in a classroom of about 30 students, there might have only been about 4 girls. And in fact, frequently, I can name more than one class where I was the only girl in the classroom in my university. And the few number of girls who were at my university at the time, we used to get together frequently, and we would joke that in terms of trying to get dates, the odds were very good. But the goods were very odd, we like to say. So I was conscious of my minority status as a young woman in a computational discipline almost every day. I understood what it meant to be the only person of my gender frequently in the classroom and frequently in the room. In fact, today, as a professional in analytics and data science, it's not uncommon for me to be the only woman at the podium, for me to be the only woman on the panel, for me to be the only woman speaker at the conference. When I was in school, you know, it's hard to reflect back again to 1985 and to remember that there was only one computer on campus. There was one, we used to call it a mainframe, and this computer was about the size of this room. And the undergraduates on campus, we all had access to, again, to one computer. I want you to think about that for a minute. For an incredibly high-ranking university in the entire world, there was one computer on campus. And I had access to it for 1 hour, 1 day a week. And that was from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Mondays. So you might say, why was I walking to the computer on campus at 1 o'clock in the morning on Monday mornings? It's because I had to feed an entire shoebox full of punch cards into the computer to see if my program would run. Now, my program, which probably took me 3 or 4 days to actually write into my punch cards. If you don't know what a punch card is, by the way, I want you to Google it. Not right now, but later on I want you to Google it. And so it would take me days to write this program that probably didn't do much more than do a simple linear regression. And I knew when I went to pick up my output the next day at the one computer on campus, there was a woman who kind of ran the office there. I knew when I arrived, and I gave her my name so I could pick up my output, if she did this, oh, it's you, I knew that my program had not run, or more specifically, it ran, but I forgot to close a loop somewhere. And so she would come out and she would go, this is your output. And I would burn easily 1,000 pages, again, because I forgot to close a loop somewhere. I didn't really ever make friends with the woman who worked at the computer center at my university. I'm happy to say that a lot of things have changed in terms of computational disciplines since 1985. First, the ratio at my university, which is not quite where I would want it to be, is about 1.5 to 1. So there's about 1.5 boys now to every girl. From what I understand, the goods are still odd. So that's good news. Also, we don't have to walk around at 1 o'clock in the morning with a shoebox full of punch cards anymore. My guess is that all of you have access to multiple computers on a daily basis. In fact, you guys probably have computers that can fit in your laptop. I mean, a laptop that actually fits in your backpack. In fact, many of you probably have computers in your pockets right now that are probably more powerful than the computer that I had access to for 1 hour a week, and a computer that probably couldn't have fit in this room. Also importantly, the way we think about data has changed very much since 1985. So when I was in school, the way we thought about data was exclusively data was numbers that fit into nice structured rows and columns. As you guys probably are increasingly becoming aware, that's not how we define data anymore, right? Data increasingly comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Data is not simply rows and columns anymore. Data comes in the form of text. Data comes in the form of images. Data comes in the form of the pictures that you're putting on Snapchat and on Instagram, all the text and the emails and the instant messages and everything else that you're doing. Data is no longer simply small, structured, and static. Data is massive, unstructured, and in motion. I want you to think about how much data you generate individually on a daily basis. Now, estimates and definitions vary, but it's been determined that, by IBM, if you want to use them as a source, that we generate about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. That's a 2 and a 5 followed by 18 zeros. Put more specifically, we have generated more data in the last 2 years than we have in the whole of human history. I want you to think about that one for a minute. We've generated more data in the last 2 years than we have in the whole of human history. With over 50 billion connected devices and growing, these numbers are going to continue to grow at an increasing rate. That's a lot of data. Now, being good at mathematics and learning how to program, learning how to code, learning how to work with data is really cool. And these are fun skills to develop. But for many of you, it's like solving puzzles or playing a video game. And I understand that all of you appreciate the fact that the skills that you're learning, the fact that you're here today is a validation of the fact that you understand how important mathematical and computational skills are going to be for your careers. And I applaud you for all of your accomplishments to date. But I want to challenge you to think a little bit more deeply. I want you all to pause and think about an issue or a challenge or a problem that you see in your community. Something that's become like a rock in your shoe. It's a problem that you see every day. Maybe you see plastic bottles on the side of the road. Maybe you see plastic in the ocean. Maybe children in your community do not have reliable access to clean water. Maybe there's children in your community who don't have access to a reliable power grid. Maybe you have a family member who's experienced cancer or AIDS. Remember those 2.5 quintillion bytes of data that we generate every day? Somewhere hidden in that data are the solutions to the issue or to the challenge or to the problem that you were just thinking about that's an issue in your community. Somewhere in that data is the solution to reducing and ultimately eliminating single-use plastic. Somewhere in that data is the solution to AIDS. Somewhere in that data is the solution to breast cancer. The solutions to these problems are buried somewhere in the data. We just have to continue to develop the skills, the methods, and the technology that we need to mine the data and find the solutions. that needle is in that haystack somewhere. We just have to find it. So as evidenced by your presence here today, I suspect that in many ways you guys already know some of these things. Your computational skills are going to take you far, and they're going to really equip you to make contributions that are deep and relevant and meaningful to your community. All of that's true. But I want to make a slightly different point that actually might be arguably more important. And that is that the computational sciences will benefit from having your voice. So what do I mean by that? Did you know that depending upon what source you look to, there's only about 20% of the practicing data scientists today are women? Did you know that? Think about those 2.5 quintillion bytes of data that are coming in every day, and all of the work, all of the algorithms that are being developed off of that data that are developing these solutions that are affecting our lives every day. Only about 20% of the people that are responsible for building those algorithms today are women. Women today only represent 23% of the technical workforce at Facebook and at Google. And believe it or not, this is a vast improvement on where it was just a couple years ago when it hovered around 10%. The overwhelming proportion of programmers, data scientists, and analysts at these companies tend to be white, Asian, and male. Black employees represented less than 6% of the technical workforce at Apple, Google, and Facebook. A 2018 survey of over 64,000 data scientists from Stack Overflow, which is one of the primary sources for crowdsourced algorithms and crowdsourced programming code, indicated that 93% of the participants at Stack Overflow were male. 90% were either white or Asian. Less than 7% of the participants were female, and less than 3% of the participants were black. These numbers are troubling. And they're not just troubling from the standpoint of basic equality and diversity. They're troubling because the lack of demographic representation is ultimately contributing to bad algorithms. So what do I mean by that? I want you to consider 3 recent cases in the last month of algorithmic bias that is impacting our lives. Earlier this month, it came to light that the algorithm that calculates credit quotas for Apple's new credit card, this is Apple, they should know better. Apple's new credit card gives higher limits across the board to men than it does for women. Steve Wozniak, one of the co-founders of Apple, recently had to speak to this when he and his wife both applied for the card from his company. Same household income, same address, same education. His line was higher. Not okay. I was actually recently walking with a girlfriend of mine, and she had the exact same experience. She and her husband both applied for the new Apple credit card. She actually has more education than he does. Same household income, same address. His line was $1,000 higher. Similarly, this last month, artificial intelligence algorithms from both Google and Amazon failed to recognize female pronouns like hers, but correctly identified male pronouns like his. The autocorrect function in LinkedIn is more likely to autocorrect to a traditional male name than a traditional female name, leading to higher hits for men relative to women who are seeking the same job. You may be familiar with Joy Balamwini, who's an MIT researcher. She's a black female data scientist who currently lives in the United States and, like I said, is a researcher at MIT. She's originally from Ghana. She was one of the first research scientists to call out IBM and Microsoft for the bias that she detected in their facial recognition algorithms. They like to claim that their facial recognition algorithms are 99% accurate, and that is true if you are light-skinned and male. As you are female and your skin gets increasingly darker, the classification rate dropped to 66%. That's not okay. Do data scientists intend to develop algorithms that are inherently discriminatory or disadvantage individuals based upon their gender or the color of their skin? I think the answer to this in almost all cases is no. I don't think data scientists are going into these algorithms with ill intent, and I don't think that they intend to do harm. I think the problem is they don't understand the harm they can do. So in analytics and data science in all computational disciplines, greater diversity of contribution is not just a nice to have. We need the skills, the talents, and the reasoning of people from across racial and ethnic and gender continuums to participate in the algorithmic logic that is increasingly shaping our lives in everything we do on a daily basis with those 2.5 quintillion bytes. These are the decisions that are related to our health care, to our finances, and to the way we live within our communities. We need the voices of young women. We need your life experiences to be heard inside those algorithms. I want you to be very confident in your abilities. From that same survey that I was citing from Stack Overflow, when asked to evaluate their own competence for the kind of work they do in their years of experience, men were much more likely to say that they are far or above average, with 67% of men indicating that they are above average. I want you to think about that and reflect on the irony of that statement. I will briefly wait for that joke to settle in. Okay, got it. All right. Girls with the same level of coding experience are less likely, less than 40%, to describe themselves as confident in their own ability. Again, I want you to think about the dichotomy of those two numbers. I look around the room today, and as someone who represents the generation that's ahead of you, in fact, increasingly, potentially 2 generations ahead of you, it brings me a great sense of encouragement and arguably pride to know that you guys are the future of computational disciplines. So yes, I encourage you to study computational sciences. These skills will serve you well. But I want to leave you today with a slightly different message. And that's understanding that it's really the computational sciences that needs you. They need your voices in those algorithms. As young women who are excelling in mathematics and in programming, you are the futures of your community, not just your local community, but your global community. You can mine the data and find the solutions to sustainable packaging, to curing cancer, to curing AIDS, for ensuring consistent and reliable access to clean water and to power. But importantly, you too can contribute in deep and meaningful ways to the algorithms that are shaping our lives today. And importantly, you can change those algorithms and make sure that your voices are heard in the future and for the lives of your daughters. So thank you. That concludes my remarks.